Imagine you're in a trench in the last year of the Great War. You haven't slept properly in days now. The mud is in your boots, in your teeth, and starting to feel it in your lungs. Artillery is going off somewhere close enough to feel in your chest. Your hands won't stop shaking, seeing familiar faces turn to casualties every day. And then you hear it. Pause. Around the corner comes a small, stocky French Bulldog. He's wearing a cravat with a logo on it. Strapped to his back is a pack of cigarettes. He looks absolutely delighted to see you, despite the chaos. This is Mutt, and he has a job to do. To understand why a cigarette-delivering dog existed, you need to understand what the men of the US Army's 11th Engineers were dealing with. These weren't fresh-faced recruits sitting safely behind the lines. The 11th Engineers were one of the first American units thrown into real combat. Not by choice, but by necessity. When the Germans broke through and pressured British front lines, the 11th were pushed straight into the fire before they were fully ready. No gradual introduction, no easing in, but just suddenly fighting in a catastrophic war. A baptism of fire is an understatement. Trench life in 1918 was a specific kind of hell. Not the dramatic Hollywood hell of constant running and shooting. It was slower and grimmer than that. It was waiting. Waiting in cold water up to your shins. Waiting while rats moved around your feet. Waiting while the noise made it impossible to think, and the silence that followed made it worse. In that environment, small comforts became enormous. A letter from home, a decent meal, and above almost everything else, a cigarette. Cigarettes weren't just a habit out there. They were a ritual, a pause, a moment where you could close your eyes and pretend, just briefly, that you were somewhere else. They were currency. They were medicine. They were the thing men asked for when they were wounded before anything else. So the question wasn't really why someone thought to deliver cigarettes to the front line. The question was, who was doing it and how? Here's something most people don't know. During World War I, the YMCA was running a frontline supply operation. Forget bake sales and swimming pools. These men were loading up trucks with tobacco, navigating active war zones, and supplying cigarettes to soldiers who needed them. There's actual National Archives footage of a YMCA man selling cigarettes out of the back of a truck on the front when a gas attack starts mid-transaction, and he just calmly pulls on his gas mask and carries on. Doesn't flinch, doesn't stop, just keeps selling cigarettes in a gas mask like it's a Tuesday. That's the organization Mutt belonged to. He was a French Bulldog, compact, sturdy, built low to the ground, which in a trench is practically an advantage. Someone had fitted him with a proper YMCA cravat, branded with the organization's logo, and strapped cigarette packs across his back. He had a trainer. He had a route. He had, by all accounts, an absolutely enormous sense of his own importance. His official role was trench runner, the same category as dogs who carried messages between units. But Mutt wasn't carrying orders. He was carrying camels. And the men of the 11th Engineers loved him for it. What made Mutt remarkable wasn't just the delivery, it was the training behind it. He'd been taught a specific gait, a low, fast, weaving run designed to make him harder to hit. In an active war zone, someone had sat down and thought carefully about how to keep this dog alive, because he mattered. His job mattered. The morale he carried, along with the cigarettes, was considered worth protecting. He was wounded twice. He kept going both times. Let's slow down here because this is the part worth sitting with. Picture being one of those soldiers. You're 22 years old. You haven't seen anything familiar in months. The men around you are exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Someone near you was fine yesterday and isn't today, and you've learned not to think about that too hard. And then Mutt arrives. He comes racing around the corner of the trench with that ridiculous trained weave, cravat slightly askew, and the second he spots the soldiers, he loses all professional composure and just wants to be petted. The cigarettes get passed around. Men who haven't smiled in days are crouching down, scratching a French Bulldog behind the ears, and for a few minutes the war just recedes slightly. This means for well over a century, the Frenchie's cheerful face in the face of adversity has been bringing smiles in family homes and deep in trench warfare. That's not nothing. That's not a small thing. Military historians talk about morale like it's an abstract concept, but it isn't. It's 20 soldiers laughing at a dog who has absolutely no idea there's a war on. It's a reminder that the world still contains ridiculous, joyful, undignified things. It's a psychological lifeline disguised as a cigarette delivery. The YMCA understood this, which is why Mutt wasn't an accident. He was a deliberate intervention. A four-legged morale operation with a YMCA cravat, and a bullet-dodging run that somebody taught him specifically so he'd survive long enough to keep doing it. He was wounded twice. He kept going both times. That detail shouldn't be glossed over. This dog took real damage in a real war and came back to work. Whether he understood what he was doing is beside the point. His consistency, his presence, his stubborn continuation of the job made him something the men could rely on. And reliability out there was everything. Mutt wasn't unique in terms of being a war dog. Around 16 million animals served in World War I in various capacities. Horses, mules, pigeons, camels, and dogs in the thousands. This number is impossible to get our heads around. Yet Mutt had the most unique role. Dogs specifically were doing extraordinary things across the war. Messenger dogs ran orders between units when every other communication method had failed. Medical dogs located wounded soldiers in no man's land. Belgian forces used large dogs to pull machine guns. The French trained terriers as rat catchers in the trenches, which sounds unglamorous until you understand that trench rats were a serious and demoralizing problem. Sergeant Stubby could detect gas attacks before the soldiers could, and once personally captured a German soldier by biting him and refusing to let go. He participated in 17 engagements and came home a celebrity. Mutt didn't have Stubby's headlines. His war was quieter, trotting through trenches, getting scritches, delivering cigarettes, getting shot at, surviving, doing it again. But there's an argument that what he provided was just as essential. Stubby saved lives in dramatic, measurable ways. Mutt saved something harder to measure, but no less real. When the war ended, most service animals were left behind. The logistics of getting them home were complicated, and the emotional cost of that decision was one that veterans carried quietly for years. Mutt was one of the lucky ones. His soldiers brought him back to the United States. He retired. He'd done his job. The YMCA's wartime operation eventually wound down too. Their cigarette supply efforts had gotten complicated, competitive, and expensive by the end. Coming into World War II, President Roosevelt folded them and several other organizations into a new group called the United Service Organizations, the USO, which has done remarkable work supporting troops ever since. They never brought back the cigarette dog, which is genuinely a loss. Mutt was a French Bulldog in a branded cravat who ran through an active war zone twice a week with tobacco strapped to his back, got shot twice, and kept showing up. In a war defined by industrialized misery on a scale the world had never seen before, he was small and warm and alive, and he kept coming back. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and suggest any ideas for future videos on your favorite dogs. See you soon!